Do you realize that anybody who knows how to use NotebookLM along with Gemini and a few other tools can now do the work of an entire startup team? Over the past few months, I've created a bunch of videos exploring these tools and workflows separately, but today I'm bringing it all together in one complete system. A system for researching, promoting, and building your dream startup ideas. I've spent literally hundreds of hours experimenting with Gemini's new superior coding capabilities and 1 million token context window to come up with this step-by-step process. And I've compiled my best strategies into this comprehensive guide for getting your ideas into the world as fast as possible. You see, while I was running my marketing agency, we worked exclusively with software companies from unicorn startups all the way to the largest SaaS company in the world. And I'm constantly shocked at how well you can combine these tools to rival or even exceed some of the work I saw from these top-tier teams. Do you realize that Sam Altman and his cronies are betting on who's going to create the first single-person $1 billion startup? After watching this compilation, I think you'll agree that that moment is a lot closer than most people think. So here's exactly what we're going to cover. First, we'll use NotebookLM, especially its Discover feature, to look into the pain points of your particular customer. Then we'll use it to look into trends in your specific industry and analyze your competitors. We'll take all that information and do a smart analysis on it, vetting it like a grilled venture capitalist. From there, we'll build out an entire marketing campaign using cutting-edge video tools like VO3 to help you generate leads. Finally, I'll give you my overview on how best to build real professional-grade software using Gemini 2.5. This is the complete playbook that I'm personally using to roll out and test some of my money-making startup ideas. So grab a coffee, settle in, and let's build something incredible together. So it all starts here with our trusty friend NotebookLM. We're gonna fire up a fresh new notebook. I always get excited when I fire up a fresh new notebook, and I get even more excited now that this feature is here. This Discover Sources feature is truly a game changer. I know that word gets thrown around quite a lot, but many of my videos relied on going to Perplexity to find sources and then dumping those into NotebookLM. You no longer have to do that. This is a very, very powerful search feature here. And you got to know how to prompt it though, because like anything, the prompt matters. And for that prompt, I'm jumping right into the cheat sheet. I make a cheat sheet for every single video that I create. These are all immediately accessible to anybody who joins my Patreon. So yeah, check that out. There's a link in the description. Starting with the user's pain point is one way to ensure that your idea is successful. I've seen a lot of software projects go off the rails when it's just something that a founder thought was a great idea but didn't have any valid data to back it up. So we're going to grab this prompt and we're going to dump this right into the Discover feature of NotebookLM, asking it to go out and look at where these people are actually voicing their opinions. We're not looking for editorials of what some person thinks about what some other person thinks about. We're looking for the voice of the customer here. And the project I'm working on today is a healthcare app that I've been thinking about. I've recently struggled with some health issues and I've had a lot of trouble understanding my blood lab work, sharing that blood lab work out. I've gotten it in, it exists in multiple places. You know, there's a portal here and a portal there. I want to build a software product that compiles all of the data for my blood work in one place. I think there's a lot of people that could benefit from this, especially if you tack on some AI capabilities of interpreting that and letting you know what these tests mean and potentially, next steps there. So I'm just saying, find sources on sites such as Reddit, Quora, and niche forums to find user pain points regarding understanding, accessing, and sharing blood work, labs, and similar healthcare data. Let's just submit that. And the better you prompt this, the more you can just select all of what is in here. Cool. Some of these are really awesome. I'm going to leave that first one out. I don't know that that's exactly what we need, but we're going to import all of those different sources. Now that all those are in there, I want to label these. So I'm going to rename the source. And for all of these, I'm just going to put user in all caps. Copy and paste that, save. This will allow us to easily find our user data from our industry data from our competitor data. All right, so there is all of our user pain point data. We're going to go back to this Discover and back into the cheat sheet here, and I'm going to say gather studies from leading consulting firms and other credible sources on exactly what you're looking to do. In this case, it's consumer healthcare apps. Looking for trends, exclude anything that was published before 2024. So we're just going to drop this in to find credible resources on industry trends. Going to import those, and these ones I'm going to rename, just put this label all caps trends in front of them so we can easily see at a glance our trends from our user info. Trust me, this is going to come in helpful later on when we have a bunch of sources in there. Cool, so we've got all of our trends, we got all of our user. This one didn't come through, so we just remove that, no big deal. And now finally, we want to look for some competitors. And importantly, we don't want to find reviews of these competitors. We're really just looking for their home pages because that's what we really want most from them. So I'm grabbing this prompt here, dropping that right into this discover. Again, looking for the most successful. Again, you can put in whatever you want here. For me, it's consumer healthcare apps and tracking software. Please return only the home page or the app page of fast-growing startups or established market leaders. Ideally, we want a mix of those, of the new hot products, as well as the ones that are, really dominating the market here. And we're looking for their main links to their main home pages. It does an awesome job of this. So really think about how you steer that prompt. We've got MyFitnessPal, Headspace, and ovulation tracker. Perfect. That's an interesting one. Not exactly what I was looking for, but that could be helpful as well, that Y Combinator. Let's import these. And I'm going to rename these. I'm going to add the competitor label to these. All right. And just like that, we have a powerful asset here for our startup idea. We've got a bunch of information about our user pain points, trends in the industry, and our competitors. So let's get into how we're going to use this next. First, I want to retitle this Bloodworks, which is sort of the placeholder name for this app that I'm working on. Okay, so now we're moving on to this step 2 analysis and strategy. And this first part of it, we're getting back to those pain points, a very simple prompt that just says, please analyze the pain points listed in these sources. We're going to copy and paste that in. But the key here is make sure only these user sources are selected. So we're going to select all of our user sources. We're going to leave everything else unselected and ask for a pain point summary. And this is exactly what we're looking for. These healthcare systems, electronic records are a very frustrating experience. Miscommunications between medical professionals and patients. So now we're going to save this note here. Then you got to click into the note and convert this to a source. So now we've added that as a source down here, and we're going to rename this to keep everything straight. We're going to rename this source User Pain Points. So that one jumps right out to us there. So the next step here, now that we have those pain points analyzed, is to cross-reference those against the industry trends using this prompt. So we're going to just grab this, and in that same exact chat string, we're going to copy and paste this in right here into the chat string. We're going to turn all of the user sources off and these trend sources on. So now we are cross-referencing these trends with the pain points using this prompt that basically says, please return an aggregate of the user trends based on, XYZ, what we're looking into as it relates to the conversation above. Let that run. And here is where those pain points align with the trends here. Beautiful analysis that we can just save as a note. And then once that note is saved, we want to open up that note and convert this to a source so that we can reference it here in the sources. And we'll save that and rename that as our trends summary. So we have the pain points summary, we have the trends as it relates to our pain points summary in here. And now's when things get exciting. We can start mapping the features of our prototype of this software. So now I'm going to refresh the chat string. I'm going to select our user pain points and our trend summary. And I'm going to grab this prompt, copy that right in. This just says, using the selected sources, please outline the key features of an app that addresses the identified concerns here. Awesome. And this does a really detailed job. So what we want to do is focus it on something that is more of an MVP or a minimum viable product or a prototype that we can start with and build upon. So that's where I use this prompt. That'll simplify simplify this down a little bit to something we can wrap our heads around initially. Awesome, this has now simplified that down into some key features for that MVP. And now I'm just gonna follow up with this prompt, which is sort of a meta prompt. It's a prompt asking for a prompt that we can then put into Gemini to start building this app out. I'm asking it to use JavaScript specifically because that's the language that I'm trying to focus on, but let's see what this comes up with. All right, we've got a pretty robust prompt here that we can now go over to Gemini with. So I'm gonna copy this out of NotebookLM. We're hopping over to gemini.google.com. We're gonna drop this right in. Got to clean up some of this beginning here. And I'm gonna title this Bloodworks. We got to turn this canvas feature on. We're going to let that run. And there it goes, building our JavaScript app. And there we have it. This is a working app here. This is the prompt that we entered in. It ran for a while. And I want to show you a trick if you want to get even more serious about this. Go to this code. We're going to select all. And moving out of this MVP prototype into a real legit piece of software, we go to Firebase, another Google product. Get started, log in here, and I'm dropping in everything that we created from that working prototype right in here. I'm gonna click run. And then I'm gonna follow it up with this prompt, which just says, here's some code from an app I created. We can use this code as is, because otherwise it kind of assumes that you're grabbing it from somebody else and it wants to reinvent the wheel. So gotta tell it, no, hey, I built this, so we can take it from here and then progress it. Just like that, ask it, say, feel free to make any enhancements you want to improve on it. And I like to say, use this shad CN, which is anytime you add that in, it's gonna make it look even better, I think. That is a Tailwind CSS thing that makes these web apps look really good. So we'll copy and paste that in and we'll follow that up, changes I wanna make, and it's gonna go through and start actually improving this and enhancing it in various ways and actually building it from basically one file into a whole set of files. So it's kind of hard to see here. I'll zoom in, but it's now taking really just that, what was a one-page app, and building out all these different TypeScript files, really turning that into a true code base that then you can edit and start to improve upon, just like any other, software tool out there. Okay, so we've built the app and now we're going to design this home page for this app, and our NotebookLM notebook is going to come super handy in there. Remember all that competitor information that we pulled? We're going to use that now. We're going to grab this prompt. We're going to copy and paste that in. We're going to make sure all the different competitors are turned on here. We want to give it access to these competitor resources now. We're also going to give it access to this MVP prompt so it knows the tool that we're building and it can cross-reference that with all these different competitors' home pages, and just saying, hey, craft a prompt for a large language model to generate a visually compelling and effective landing page or home page for this product. So again, that is a meta prompt, a prompt that we're using to create a prompt that we're going to put into Gemini to create the marketing web page. Because when you go to a new piece of software, you don't go right into the software. You go into a home page that you can then click get started and access the app that way. So that's what we're going to use to build out next. All right, so that has run and created this landing page prompt. Remember to save it as a note and then save that note as a source. And this is the prompt that we're going to use that summarizes the tool and all of the language from these other competitors into a prompt that will build our homepage for this thing. Grabbing that, copying and pasting that back into Gemini here. Again, we want to turn Canvas on and let's start building the marketing website for this product. And we're running here. All right, and there we have our little app here. I want to change the name here to make sure it says Bloodworks. There we go, and it rocked those icons. I've had trouble with those icons before, but this time it did it. So now to publish this app and website to the web, I'm going to use Replit. It's what I'm most familiar with. You can, again, also use that Firebase option, but I'm just going to grab this prompt here that will allow us to take what we've already created and drop it into Replit and get it online. So when you open Replit, you're going to be met with its agent here, and we're just asking it, hey, take the document attached and use this exact code. No need to change anything. I'm simply looking to create a new Replit with this and host it on Replit. So we're adding that prompt in, and then we're grabbing the code from Gemini. So here is what we created in Gemini. We grab this code, select all, copy, paste that in, start building, and it builds it. So it's going to ask you to look through a plan. This is all there, and I think you can just approve the plan and start. And ideally, it won't try to reinvent the wheel, but it'll just take that file and help you host it right here. And again, this is a place just like Firebase where you can then start to improve it and add features and build it more into a full working code base. There we go. Looks awesome. Now all we got to do is click deploy, and there's a few different ways to deal with this. Auto scale usually works well. Click, 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 keep clicking forward. And there you go. Now we have both the home page here. This is live. Anybody can visit it. And we have it connected when you got to work through this in Replit and just fix the link. When you click get started, it opens the fully hosted app here. So we've got the home page, we got the app all online, all just a few hours of work maximum. Now we got to promote it. All right, so now step 5, we're going to move into creating a content strategy for our new startup idea. And this is really what my background is in. I ran a content marketing agency for over 10 years, worked with all sorts of software companies before I really decided to pivot into this new world of AI, and I started this Blazing Zebra channel. Blazing, we got to move fast, and Zebra, we've got to, identify our own strengths, our own passions, and bring them to this new world of AI. So I hope you subscribe and follow along with these videos as you begin to pivot and transition into your new AI career with some intentionality, and ideally, it's a more fulfilling career than any that you've had in the past. So for the content strategy, we're going to use this prompt here that just says develop a content marketing strategy outlining 4 hub pieces of content, each supported by 4 blog posts that link to those different traffic sources there. And we're going to copy and paste this right back into our NotebookLM notebook. For this one, you can pretty much have all of the sources on and see what it comes up with. Awesome. So it's returned already a pretty killer content marketing campaign. And if you've done anything with AI, you probably know how to create a blog post or even a long form piece of content. But I bet you don't know how to create infographics and interactive pieces of content, so that's what I want to show you how to do next. So I'm grabbing this prompt. This is another meta prompt, a prompt that creates a prompt for designing a visually compelling infographic related to one of the hub page ideas that it came up with. Very cool. That is pretty big. We're going to save that as a note, as we always do, and save that, convert that to a source so we have that. Going to copy and paste all this right into Gemini, turn on that canvas. I'm also going to supply the code from our main landing page here so that it can follow the brand, look and feel that we've already been working on. I'm adding that there. You can also upload it here as a separate file though. So let's let that go and see if we can create that. So here's the result of that infographic here. You can see it follows all of the styles of our previous creations. We can get that online using Replit the same way we got the app and the home page online, and we can start to build out our content portal that way. But there is so much you can do from here, not only infographics, but you can create cluster visualizations. Here's just a peek at what this can do when it comes to creating interactive content. I used it to just create an interactive mind map about all the NotebookLM features, limitations, etc. So you can create content like this and get it online, copying the code in using that same process I showed you on Replit or Firebase. So that's how ridiculously easy it is to build a working prototype with NotebookLM and Gemini. Pretty mind-blowing, right? But here's where things get dangerous. See, 90% of startups fail because they build something that nobody wants. So before you fall in love with your shiny new app, let me show you how to replace the guest guesswork with data. I've personally run survey projects for software companies that cost tens of thousands of dollars. These companies made these investments just to figure out if their ideas were worth pursuing. Now you can do the same thing for free by going to online communities where your customers are already screaming about their problems. Here's the kicker, this is actually more accurate than those survey projects because people tend to be brutally honest when they're venting online. What you're about to see would have cost my agency clients a fortune just a couple years ago. It's so easy to convince yourself that you're on the right path. I find that it's helpful to view your situation like a skeptical venture capitalist. The things that a venture capitalist is very interested in is this founder market fit. So that's going to be the first step that we look at. Then we're going to be spending a lot of time doing some deep customer discovery work. That's really one of the main things that these AI tools unlock. Then we're going to look at developing a distinct uncrowded angle, as well as strong signals for monetization. And finally, we're going to get into a clear vision and momentum and narrative. That's our checklist to make sure that we are finding and vetting our startup ideas properly. This first step here, idea generation, starting with what you know is critical. So many founders get some sort of idea, they hear something on the news in an industry unrelated to what they have any experience with, and that's a recipe for disaster. So just like anybody writing a novel needs to focus on writing what they know, founders need to do the same thing. Tiago Forte released a video recently that was a really awesome look at how to use NotebookLM for self-reflection. And I think that that is a great tool to sort of think through some of the problems that you're facing and get a feel for some of the things that you might have a great founder market fit for. I've got a couple different prompts here in the cheat sheet that can help with that. If you have a bunch of journal entries, you can load those into NotebookLM, or if you have any sort of Notion notes or anything that might serve that purpose, it might be great to load that into Notion. However, if you're using ChatGPT, they recently allowed you to chat with all of your different chat strings. So ChatGPT now has access to any historical conversations. That's a great place as well to use prompts like this that just ask about, what are some key themes or patterns that have emerged over the course of our conversations? What are some challenges, some things that, might lead you to unexpected areas where you might have some founder market fit there. So that is one way. These first few steps, we're just looking at, all the different options on the table. One of the big mistakes, I think, is just going with the first idea that you have. You want to generate a ton of different options. I did a video all about Rick Rubin's creative process. I'm going to link to that in the description. That talks about generating a ton of different options. That's what these first couple steps are all about. So for founder market fit, we're just using prompts like these to figure out where you might have a significant advantage. This includes where you might be an industry insider or where you might understand the user pain points better than anybody else. Once you've got a feel for that, we're going to move on to the next section here, which is just scanning the horizon. And again, we just want to open up our aperture as wide as possible to think about all the different options that are available to us. And this one really focuses around where is the world changing? Where are things just naturally getting disrupted? That's where the big opportunities are. We can use a prompt sequence like this to help uncover those opportunities. The example that I'm using today is my healthcare startup idea that I've been working on. So I'm copying this prompt right into Gemini. It basically just says, what are some ways the consumer healthcare industry is changing? What are some trends leading to these disruptions? Exactly. This is exactly where I'm focused on, this digital transformation and the rise of health tech, empowered and proactive consumers. Yep, these are all of the things that align perfectly with what I am trying to do. So I'm going to follow this up now with this prompt that just says, how might these lead to opportunities for startups? Because I'm still in the vetting process of this startup idea, and I want to make sure I get it right before I really dig in anymore. So following that up right here, just seeing, what are some opportunities here, because I want to just, see how many different angles can I approach this. There's a lot I didn't consider in here. There are a couple resources that you might want to check out for this phase. One is called Exploding Topics, which shows you, all sorts of graphs about what topics are becoming more popular. And another one here called CB Insights. I'm not being paid to recommend these. These are just tools that have come across my radar as being helpful for this phase. This is also a phase where you might want to conduct a deep research consulting project like I've shown in a previous video. I'll link to that as well, where you can do a deep dive into a lot of this research. All right, now that we've scanned the horizon, the next step is to really understand what problem we want to focus on. So there's a concept called Netnography, and this is a powerful concept because now with these powerful AI tools, we can do some amazing things that weren't possible. I used to do massive surveys and studies to try to figure out user preferences for these software companies, but the problem with that is everybody taking those surveys knew that they were answering a survey. They knew that they were under a lens in some way, and that shaped the way that they would answer that survey. Netnography turns that on its head, and it really seeks to look at what these users are saying out in the wild. And this involves looking at forums like Reddit and Quora to understand what they're actually saying to folks when they're not filling out a survey or, being interviewed on a, product demo or something like that. So this is what we're going to use to understand this problem as deeply as possible. The first step here, you can use a general prompt in Gemini that just asks, how are these people dealing with this, just to get a general sense of what Gemini might say. But the real magic comes from uncovering, these different Reddit forums. So I'm going to focus on this prompt that helps us look for online communities or forums that are related to users of consumer healthcare. Dropping this right into Gemini, and here we go. This is what I'm looking for. Subreddits, the health subreddit, chronic pain subreddit, diabetes subreddit. Those are all gold right there. I'm just diving a little deeper, asking for a full list of the subreddits that might be useful here. Very cool. It has returned a ton of these different subreddits. So now I'm going to just take these subreddits and drop them right into NotebookLM. So we're going to add that health link, chronic pain, and diabetes. So we've loaded in a few of these subreddits here, and it just pulls in what's on that page. So these are not automatically dynamically updated, I don't believe, and they don't go deep into all of the different pages here, but there should be enough on those pages to get us a lot of good information. And you can obviously load in all sorts of different threads, go as deep as you want into this step till you feel satisfied that you've got enough information in there. And now we're just going to use prompts like these to try to understand the pain points as deeply as possible, and most importantly, in the actual user's words. I'm copying this one right in that just asks about different challenges or frustrations that users face when it comes to sharing and accessing their health information. Exactly. Misinterpretation or dismissal by healthcare professionals. Interesting. Stigma, judgment, and being treated as drug seekers. That's an interesting one I had not thought of. Difficulty accessing necessary medications. Yes, I've had experience with that. But this is also showing me a bunch of things that I didn't, fully realize. So I'm just going to follow it up with what are some frequent words or phrases they use when it comes to how they express these frustrations. This can be really useful when it comes to marketing, that we're actually explaining these problems in their own language. Let's see what this pulls in. Really cool. Unseen and stupid is a phrase that is being used. One of these folks was described as a hysterical female. Interesting. Now we're really getting into the psychographics of how these users feel, which is really powerful when we're vetting our ideas and trying to build a game plan here. Combing through these subreddits and going deep on this is, I believe, the number one way to get a firm handle on the problem, and it can be done now at scale, whereas previously that was just a whole lot of manual labor. Now you can do it very quickly using Gemini and NotebookLM. Here are a couple other prompts from the cheat sheet that might be interesting, listing all the questions found in the sources that users ask about product recommendations, tool suggestions, or solutions. Help you get a feel for identifying their needs. Also, this one for understanding themes. Identify the common themes, formats, stories, questions, guides, or tones present in the most highly commented posts. So those will get you pretty far. Some other resources here. There's a book called The Mom Test by Rob Fitzpatrick, which talks about how to conduct consumer interviews appropriately. And there's a lot you can take away from this book and put into your prompts. He talks a lot about getting them to talk about their life, not your idea. So you might want to think about prompting these large language models to, figure out what are the lives of these folks like, day in and day out versus highly focusing on your particular product. All right, so now that we have a deep understanding for the customer's pain points, it's time to find a distinct and uncrowded angle for your startup idea. This is another angle that you want to vet your startup through. Here is a super powerful prompt for that. It just says, from these Reddit threads, highlight examples where users describe cobbling together their own solutions using multiple tools or creating DIY fixes. What does this reveal about unmet needs? So right there, you can get a feel for what is not being offered in the marketplace that you can then capitalize on. This is another place where you might want to use Gemini to go out and gather a complete list of your competitors or potential competitors and perform a gap analysis. Here's a killer prompt for that. This one just says, I'm considering building a software product to help people with X, whatever you're trying to help people with. Please do some research around competitors in this space and return a table with 3 columns. Number 1, pain point. Number 2, existing solution. Number 3, opportunity or white space. Focus on where pain points aren't fully addressed. This is interesting. When you pop this in, it now automatically knows that we are going to be doing some deep research here. So it knows that it needs more than just one shot at this, that it's going to need to gather a bunch of information. We'll come back to that here in a second. While that's running, let's jump ahead and look at some monetization signals. So here's another prompt that I'm using inside of NotebookLM that just asks, are there any monetization signals from these comments? Is there anything here that leads us to believe they would pay for a new service in this area? And running that in this example with just these 3 subreddits loaded, it gives you a lot of ideas around how you can position your product and things that, folks might be willing to pay for based on, the different costs, different things that they are struggling with, including this cost associated with managing stigma and lack of support. I can identify with that, and all the time invested in figuring out these different healthcare issues. I can empathize with that directly. So these can give you some really interesting thoughts about, the monetization aspect of your product or service. And these are also really powerful when it comes to the marketing as well, as you can start to make the case for why your product is worth something, based on these different areas of pain and frustration. This cheat sheet goes much more in depth about some of the next steps here, where you can start to think about a high-level roadmap for this validation to the MVP, to the scale process, and even thinking through this all-important go or no-go decision based on your checklist from that founder market fit, urgency of the problem, market size, willingness to pay, monetization, competitive defensibility, and speed to the MVP here. Here's another powerful prompt. I've been using this one like crazy that just looks into pricing models in this space. Pricing is always such a conundrum, but using Gemini to do this type of research can really help you understand what people are accustomed to paying, so you're not just throwing some wildly, new type of offer at them. Now jumping back to that deep research, that report has finished running. Remember, this is the one where we're asking for a table of 3 columns, focusing on pain points and where they are not fully addressed. And this is a long, deep research report, but here is the table that we're looking for, which maps out all the different pain points in this space and the open white space, the opportunity for a startup to come in here. So that alone is worth gold. That would cost many tens of thousands of dollars to create previous to this technology. So I hope you got something out of this. I hope you can think of this as a checklist for generating ideas, vetting those ideas, seeing those ideas through the lens of a VC. Again, even if you're bootstrapping, kind of thinking, would somebody put $100,000 into this, $1 million into this, $10 million into it, and viewing it that way very seriously before you commit to building something out like this. But once you've found a real problem worth solving and validated it like a pro, it's time to start building your audience. Don't wait until your product's ready to start marketing. That's amateur hour. The pros build their audience while they're building their product, turning their early fans into a feedback goldmine. Here's where things get really exciting because Google just dropped VO3, and while everybody's using it to make funny TikTok videos, I'm about to show you how to turn it into a customer acquisition machine. I ran a marketing agency for 10 years and worked for agencies for many years before that. What used to take tens of thousands of dollars in production costs, you can now do in an afternoon. We're not just making videos here, we're building an entire lead generation system that runs on autopilot. Think Super Bowl quality ads, but for your startup. Let me show you how. It starts with one research session that turns into dozens of videos and lead magnets that work around the clock to grow your business. The goal of this first step, this first research session, is to come up with a major topic for our marketing campaign. This marketing campaign can last anywhere from 90 days to possibly a year. The information that we're going to be focusing on today is this user information, and the quick and dirty of collecting this user information is to go into this sources section, add a source, use this Discover Sources feature right here to find Reddit pages and Reddit communities all around your different users and specifically the problems that they're encountering. The basic outcome there is we create this source here, which is our user pain points source. From here, I'm going to deselect all the sources except for that one user pain points source. And next, I'm jumping into the cheat sheet. I'm going to grab this first prompt here and copy this right into NotebookLM. And as usual, NotebookLM has come up with some great ideas for this marketing campaign based directly from these user pain points. The one that I like the most right here is navigating the healthcare maze, a patient's journey through systematic barriers. Now that we have that, we can move on to step 2, which is creating the core piece of content. This is going to be our lead magnet, a guide, and we're going to use Gemini to build out this guide. Specifically, we're going to use Gemini's deep research functionality, which allows us to create an incredibly in-depth guide. But it's such a powerful tool that we want to make sure we're prompting it right. And for that, I use a process called the meta prompt. This meta prompt is a prompt that creates a prompt. It has nothing to do with Meta, the Facebook company, but it's basically allowing us to take the topic idea out of NotebookLM and convert that into an extensive prompt that we can use to guide our deep research project. And I've done this quite a lot, so this prompt has grown quite a bit over the months that I've been experimenting, but it's basically just saying, hey, help me create a highly detailed prompt that I can use with a large language model to generate a research-backed cornerstone report. This will be a pillar piece of content, a lead magnet, or opt-in download. So letting it know exactly what we're looking for here. And then at the bottom, it's going to have our specifications. So I'm going to copy all of this right here into Gemini. And then I'm going to drop in the specifications, which is just copied and pasted straight out of NotebookLM. I'm separating those specifications with 3 little quotation marks, just so it's a little bit easier for Gemini to understand what the specifications are versus what I'm looking for. We're going to let that run. Okay, and now that has returned a powerful prompt that we can use to guide our deep research. And here it is. It starts here and it goes on and on and on and on. Multiple pages for this prompt outlining what we're looking for in each chapter. So we're covering all of the bases that we found in NotebookLM based on those user pain points. It includes the tone and other instructions with citations. So really powerful stuff. I'm going to grab this prompt now. We're going to open a new chat in Gemini. We're going to go to this 2.5 Pro. We're going to select Deep Research, and we're going to copy and paste that massive prompt in that goes into depth of what we're looking for this guide. And we're going to let that run. It's outlined the process that it's going to go through for creating this report, and I clicked Start Research. And here it is. So a very robust report. I think this thing turned out to be 60 pages. And what's super cool is you can export this now right into Google Docs by clicking this button. Now we've got this in a Google Doc and it looks pretty cool, but for an actual PDF download, we're gonna want to make it look even better. And I recently learned that the tool Gamma can now do really cool layouts for documents, not just slides. I'm not sponsored by Gamma or Gemini or any of the tools that I'm gonna be showing you today, or pretty much any video I've ever made. This is just the workflow that I've found works great for me. So here at gamma.app, you can start for free, and we go right here to create new, import file, import from Google Drive. It connects right to your drive. Import that patient empowerment document. It's gonna take a second, and you wanna select document here, continue, and this is the key. I love that they now allow you to preserve what you've created. Before, Gamma would go through and kind of rewrite everything, but now we were just using it as a design tool and not so much as a writing tool. So we want to preserve all the good stuff that Gemini Deep Research created. A quick note, if your guide is very long, you're going to burn through a lot of different tokens. You can see here, I'm way over the token limit. So you might want to condense your guide down a little bit, which is what I have done. Okay, so here is the shorter version. There's all sorts of different things you can select for the AI images, and the final format, again, needs to be document if we're going to use this as a lead magnet, as a download that people can get when they sign up for your email. I'm going to click continue. And now we get to select the theme for this document. There's a ton of different options. I love this shuffle theme feature. You can even go in and customize it with your brand, colors, fonts, etc. Let's go ahead and click generate, and there we go. It is generating, and here is what we came out with here. So you can see the layout is much better. There's a lot of images here. It's just looks much better than a Google Doc. One thing you want to do is go up in here and in your page setup, make sure you pick this letter setting. Otherwise, it's going to default into slides basically. And from there, you can just export it as a PDF. And now we've got the core download, the lead magnet for our marketing campaign done. It's time to move to the next step. But before we do that, I just want to pause, check in with you, and let you know that if you're feeling a little overwhelmed with all this AI stuff, I just want to let you know you are definitely not alone. Take a deep breath. That's why I created this channel. I want to help as many people as I can learn how to pivot into this new AI reality and not just work harder, but I truly believe we can lead more fulfilling lives by letting AI do a lot of this hard work so we can just do the fun stuff. So now we can move on to the next step, which is to build a simple landing page for your lead magnet. You can use tools like Lead Pages, or you can even use Gemini to build out a basic landing page and connect that to your MailChimp account. Those are fairly basic things. I'm not going to go into depth on that right here. If you want something like that, let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to do that. What I'm excited to get into is these videos. So we're going to chop up this hub piece of content into a bunch of different spokes that will become the different videos that promote that landing page and that lead magnet, so you can start to get opt-ins that way. And here's the prompt we're going to use for that. I'm just going to copy and paste this into a new Gemini chat string. It basically just says, here is the hub piece of content. Can you help me generate 10 to 20 different ideas of spoke content from this one hub or this cornerstone piece? Then I'm going to copy in that entire guide. And this one, I think the 2.5 flash model is probably okay. I'm gonna let that run. All right, that has run and given us some really good ideas. I really like this one about feeling invisible at the doctor's office. You're not alone. Now I'm gonna follow up with this prompt that just says, hey, give me 5 different twists ideas for that. So just really diving in deeper there, and goes through a little bit more of what we're looking for, that these are gonna be shorts. I think humor works the best when going viral. You can do more of something that teaches as well in these, but I think for VO3 right now in its current status, this humor really pays off. So thinking about things that are, like an SNL type parody, we're going to copy and paste this now right back into Gemini to get some twist ideas for this initial idea. And to be honest, I didn't love what it came back with. It kind of went in a bunch of different directions. So I just said, hey, let's just focus on that feeling invisible at the doctor's office. So this is the part where we got to nudge it a little bit. And this brought me into this idea of just these different ways that doctors can dismiss you when you've got some symptoms. And once we have the core of that idea, we can really start focusing in on creating scripts that are good for VO3. So I've just said, give me 4 different short form video scripts for option 1. I'm going to be using VO3 to generate it. And it's going to be a short form video, so the whole thing's going to be about 40 seconds. So it kind of breaks up these different segments, and it basically describes how VO3 works. Since there's no character continuity, that is the trickiest part in VO3. You've got to just have each character being separate, but still building a story around that. So each segment needs to have a different person, but what they're saying should tell a story. And some cool things to think about are formats such as man-on-the-street interviews, customer testimonials, social media style reaction mashups. Things like that can really help when you're coming up with these montages that will become your final video. And this will change. There's a tool called Flow that can give you more continuity. That is fairly expensive. And I gotta say, with VO3, it is a little more expensive than most AI that you're used to because it takes so much time and energy to generate these clips. You've got to go inside of a personal Google account and have that highest tier. Right now, that tier is running about $150, and then it goes up to $250 in 3 months, something like that. So this is not cheap, but when you see what you can come up with, it's, I think, very powerful if you do have the budget for that. I think there are other ways you can use VO3 and just pay with credits. So if you know exactly how to do that, let me know in the comments. I'm pretty interested in that. And this prompt has returned a bunch of different ideas. And really what I'm looking for is the dialogue in here, some of the things that I think are funny. But to be honest, DeepSeek, the Chinese AI, came up with the absolute funniest stuff. I think it has less guardrails on it than some of the AI that we have access to. Grok Unhinged can work pretty well, I've heard as well. This prompt worked really well. What are some of the most ridiculous things a doctor can say to an urgent issue? Stay in an SNL type vibe. This pulled in some funny stuff, such as bones are just fancy sticks, maybe walk it off. And to be honest, creating this dialogue part is really where you have a lot of back and forth with the AI. And I was finally able to come up with this final dialogue here. I'm not going to read it to you because I'm going to show you the video here in a second, but this is just different patients and doctors having a kind of a ridiculous conversation back and forth. And now it's finally time to get into VO and start creating these videos. So here we are. Just do a search for VO is the main way I've known to find it. You can use it trying in Gemini. You've got to pay the extra price to use it in Flow, but click in Gemini. And on the regular Pro plan, you get a few tries, but not too many. You've really got to upgrade to that ultra level, and you've got to be on a personal account. So if you're inside of a G Suite, I think there's problems there. But again, all the Google billing stuff is very confusing to me. And this is the prompt that ended up working the best in VO3, and it can be expensive kind of iterating through these. You can use a lot of credits really quickly, but this just candid shaky cam footage of a patient and then the dialogue right here. So I'm going to copy this in, going to VO3 in Gemini, and you can see I've got that Ultra now, and I've been generating a bunch of these videos. So here is that one of the candid shaky cam patient. So then you've got to edit all these together. I've got a video all about that, which I will link to now. You can also use CapCut to edit these together. And here's the final result of what I came up with.
Your doctor said, what?
Well, let me get you a Band-Aid.
Have you tried drinking water?
Dying? Or just dramatic? Let's check WebMD.
I've been having crushing chest pain and left arm numbness for hours.
Have you tried chewing slower? Sometimes big bites can feel like a heart attack.
I fell down the stairs and my leg is swollen, purple, and bent the wrong way.
Well, bones are just fancy sticks. Maybe walk it off?
Ah! I am literally on fire!
Want to navigate the mess that healthcare has become? Download the guide.
All right, I really got a kick out of making that video. I hope you enjoyed it as well. We've now gone through that entire process, starting with user pain points, figuring out a great topic idea for a hub piece of content, then breaking that into a bunch of different spokes, iterating on what types of content we might want to create for each of those spokes, and then creating a full script that can be used inside of VO3, and then going through and creating these videos. Like I said, generating them is the easy part. You got to iterate through a handful of them, but if you follow that prompt, you should be in pretty good shape. Then editing that together inside of Descript, and now that thing is ready to be blasted out into social media all over the world. Now, I know you're here for strategy and not a coding tutorial, but here's my 30-second blueprint for actually building your software. I recommend Windsurf connected to Gemini 2.5 and start with this free SaaS template that already has Stripe integration and user authentication built in. That's months of work already done right there. I'll link to a couple videos that go into this in depth, but all you need to do is tell Windsurf to clone that repo and start connecting it to your accounts. The workflow is pretty simple. You just build it inside of Windsurf, push it to GitHub, and deploy it on Vercel. I really like to use Supabase as the database resource, but again, the details about all of that are in the videos that I will link to in the description. Once you've got that basic template up and running, you can start iterating, adding your product features and everything else. This video is a compilation of many different processes, and I've just barely scratched the surface. The cheat sheet that accompanies this video goes way deeper into every section, including tons of prompts and strategies we didn't have time to cover today, including how to find and validate million-dollar problems using NotebookLM, how to think like a VC and ensure you're building something that people want, how to create marketing content that converts with VO3, and yes, how to actually build and deploy working software. All of that and 135 other cheat sheets are all instantly available to anybody who joins my Patreon. So if this helped you, please consider supporting this channel so I can continue to help you build your dream startup. Remember, Blazing, we gotta move fast. Zebra, we've gotta embrace what makes us unique. Along those lines, I've got another video all about high-level strategy that pairs perfectly with what you've just learned. I've got a link to that right here. I'll see you over there.
Make your dreams come true.